You think you're being punished. You think the betrayal, the silence, and the fear mean God has left the building. But what if the breaking point is actually the starting line? What if the enemies surrounding you aren't there to destroy you, but to define you? This is the story of Adrian, and it might just be the story of you. Theme: the battle of betrayal and the battle of loss. The champagne in the crystal flute was warm, but Adrian didn't care. He stood near the floor-to-ceiling window of the monolithic Stratton Oak headquarters, looking down at the sprawling grid of the city. From 40 floors up, the cars looked like blood cells moving through an artery. He felt untouchable. Tonight was the merger. The night he became the youngest partner in the firm's history. Stop looking at the view, Adrian. You're missing the applause. Adrian turned. Silas was walking toward him. Silas, his mentor, his best friend. The man who had pulled Adrian out of a mid-level accounting slump 10 years ago and molded him into a shark. Silas raised his glass. "To the chosen one," Silas said, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Si," Adrian said, clinking his glass against the older man's. "Seriously, you fought for me when the board wanted to hire from the outside." "I fought for you because you have something they don't," Silas said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have a moral compass. Rare in this business. Dangerous, but rare." A murmur went through the crowd as the CEO, a man named Mr. Sterling, tapped the microphone. The room hushed. Adrian straightened his tie. This was it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, his voice booming, "tonight marks a new era. But new eras require clean slates. We have discovered serious irregularities in the Project Vista accounts." Adrian frowned. Vista was his project. He had audited it 3 times. It was spotless. He looked at Silas. Silas was staring straight ahead, his jaw set. "Evidence has been brought to light," Sterling continued, his eyes scanning the room until they locked onto Adrian. "Evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and a massive breach of trust." The room went cold. Adrian chuckled nervously. "What is he talking about?" he whispered to Silas. Silas didn't answer. He took a step away from Adrian. Just 1 step, but it felt like a mile. "Security," Sterling said. "Please escort Mr. Adrian Thorne from the building. The authorities are waiting in the lobby." "What?" Adrian dropped his glass. It shattered, champagne soaking his expensive Italian shoes. "Silas? Silas, tell them! You signed off on the audits. You hold the counter keys." Adrian reached out, grabbing Silas's arm. Silas looked down at Adrian's hand as if it were a dirty rag. He peeled Adrian's fingers off his suit jacket. "I trusted you, Adrian," Silas said, his voice loud enough for the board to hear. "I vouched for you, and you played us all." The betrayal hit Adrian harder than a physical blow. It wasn't the accusation. It was the source. This was the battle of betrayal. The moment the person you washed feet with, the person you broke bread with, hands you over to the Romans. 2 security guards seized Adrian's arms as they dragged him past the hors d'oeuvres tables, past the colleagues who refused to make eye contact. Adrian saw Silas pull a folded envelope from his inner pocket and hand it to Mr. Sterling. The evidence. Fabricated by the man who taught Adrian everything he knew. Adrian didn't fight. He went numb. He was shoved into the elevator, the doors closing on his life. The twist of loss. The humiliation in the lobby was worse. Handcuffs, flashing lights. He was released on bail 4 hours later. His bank accounts frozen, his reputation incinerated. He took a cab home, his mind racing. "I can fix this. I have the digital backups on the home server. I can prove Silas moved the money." He burst into his suburban home, ready to set up a war room. Tessa, wake up! I need you!" The house was dark. Too dark. He ran to the bedroom. Empty. The closet doors were open. Her clothes were gone. On the nightstand, where her Bible usually sat, was a note. "Adrian, the FBI was here an hour ago. They took the computers, they took the hard drives. They said you stole millions. I tried to call you, but Silas called me first. He told me everything. He told me about the offshore accounts in my name. How could you involve me? How could you put our daughter in danger? I'm taking Lily to my mother's. Don't follow us." Adrian fell to his knees. The digital backups were gone. His wife was gone. His daughter was gone. In the span of 6 hours, Adrian had entered the battle of loss. God hadn't just pruned the branches. He had chopped the tree down to the stump. "God!" Adrian screamed at the empty ceiling, his voice cracking. "I did it right. I tithed. I served. I was honest. Why is this happening?" The only answer was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant siren of a police car. Theme: the battle of silence and the battle of unworthiness. 3 months later, the high-rise view was replaced by the cracked drywall of a studio apartment in a part of town where the streetlights didn't work. Adrian hadn't been convicted yet. The legal process was a slow, grinding torture. But the court of public opinion had already executed him. He was unhirable. The Thorn embezzlement was industry shorthand for corruption. Adrian sat on a stained mattress, staring at a prepaid phone that never rang. This was the battle of silence. For 90 days, Adrian had prayed. He had fasted. He had wept. He had read every psalm of lament. He expected a burning bush. He expected a sudden witness to come forward. He expected God to send a lightning bolt to strike Silas down. Instead, silence. Heaven was brass. "Are you even there?" Adrian whispered. "Did I make you up? Was my faith just a safety blanket for when things were good?" A knock at the door made him jump. It wasn't the police. It was his landlord, a burly man named Arthur, who smelled of tobacco and engine grease. "Rent's late, Adrian," Arthur said, leaning against the doorframe. "I know, Arthur. I have a job interview today. A warehouse gig. I'll have the money by Friday." Arthur looked at him. He didn't look with pity, but with a strange curiosity. "You used to be a big shot, didn't you? Saw you on the news." Adrian looked down, shame burning his neck. This was the battle of unworthiness, the feeling that perhaps the accusation was true, not legally but spiritually. Maybe I deserve this. Maybe I was arrogant. Maybe I loved the money more than I thought. That was a different life, Adrian muttered. "You guilty?" Arthur asked bluntly. "No." Arthur grunted. "Good. Then stop acting like a convict. Get your head up." He tossed a newspaper onto the bed. "Check the classifieds in the back. My brother needs a night watchman at the salvage yard. It's dirty work, but it pays cash. No background check." Adrian took the job. The encounter. 2 weeks later, Adrian was patrolling the salvage yard at 2 a.m. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle. He was wearing an oversized yellow poncho, his boots caked in mud. He was a finance VP, a man who understood derivatives and macroeconomics, and he was guarding rusted transmissions. A black luxury sedan pulled up to the gate. Adrian stiffened. He recognized the license plate. S.O. Corp. The window rolled down. It was Julian, a junior analyst who used to fetch Adrian's coffee. Julian looked at Adrian, then looked at the gate. He didn't recognize Adrian under the hood and the grime. "Open the gate, old man," Julian snapped. "I'm here to pick up the owner's vintage Jaguar for detail." Adrian froze. He could lower the hood. He could look Julian in the eye. He could demand respect. But shame paralyzed him. The battle of unworthiness whispered, "You are nobody. You are trash. Hide." Adrian kept his head down, rain dripping off his nose, and unlocked the gate. As the car drove past, the tire splashed mud all over Adrian's legs. "Idiot," Julian muttered, rolling up the window. Adrian stood in the rain, shaking. Not from cold, but from rage. He wanted to scream. He wanted to break the window and drag Julian out. He ran to the small guard shack and slammed the door. He grabbed his Bible, which sat next to his thermos, and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a thud and fell open. "I am done," Adrian yelled. "I am done waiting. I am done being humble." He slumped into the chair, burying his face in his hands. His eyes fell on the security monitors. The salvage yard had cameras everywhere. One of the monitors showed the back office of the yard. Arthur's brother, the owner, was arguing with someone. Adrian squinted. The man arguing with the owner wasn't a customer, it was Silas. Adrian leaned in, his heart hammering against his ribs. What was Silas doing at a junkyard at 2 a.m.? He turned up the volume on the console. The audio was grainy, but audible. "Need the hard drive destroyed, not just wiped," Silas was saying. "Physically shredded. Tonight. It'll cost you double for a rush job," the owner said. "I don't care about the cost," Silas hissed. "That drive contains the original metadata for the Vista project. If Thorne ever finds out I kept a copy as insurance, I'm dead. Destroy it." Adrian stopped breathing. The drive wasn't gone. Silas had kept the original, unaltered files, likely as leverage in case the CEO ever turned on him. And now he was destroying the last piece of evidence that could clear Adrian's name. Adrian looked at the phone. He could call the police, but they wouldn't get here in time. He looked at the tire iron in the corner of the shack. This was the test. The silence was over. The betrayal was raw. The loss was heavy. But now, fear and opportunity were colliding. God wasn't answering his prayers with peace. He was answering with a choice. Adrian grabbed the tire iron. He wasn't going to wait for God to save him. He was going to save himself. Theme: the battle of fear and the battle of patience. Adrian tightened his grip on the tire iron. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. This was the battle of fear. Not the anxious worry about paying bills, but the primal, gut-wrenching terror of physical danger and the finality of prison. The enemy was no longer a spreadsheet. It was a man who had already murdered his reputation and was now erasing his existence. He kicked the office door open. It slammed against the wall with a thunderous crack. Silas jumped, dropping the external hard drive. Arthur's brother, a man named Red, who was twice Adrian's size, spun around, reaching for a drawer. "Don't!" Adrian roared, swinging the tire iron and smashing a glass display case full of hubcaps. The violence of the sound froze the room. "Hands on the desk, both of you!" Silas squinted, his eyes adjusting to the figure in the yellow poncho. "Adrian?" A slow, incredulous smile spread across his face. "Look at you. You look like a drowned rat. Is this your kingdom now?" "The drive, Silas," Adrian said, his voice trembling but loud. "Kick it over." "Or what?" Red sneered, stepping forward. "You gonna hit me with that stick, accountant?" Red lunged. Adrian didn't think. He reacted. He swung the iron, not at Red, but at the stack of precarious car batteries on the shelf next to him. The shelf collapsed. Heavy lead blocks rained down, crashing between Red and Adrian, spilling acid and creating a chaotic barrier. Red stumbled back, cursing. Adrian dove for the drive. His fingers closed around the cold metal casing. "He's got it!" Silas screamed, his composure cracking. "Kill him!" Adrian scrambled up and bolted out the door, back into the rain-slicked maze of the salvage yard. He could hear heavy boots splashing behind him. He ducked between two stacks of crushed sedans. The rain was torrential now. He was cornered, muddy, and terrified. "Run!" his instinct screamed. "Fight!" his adrenaline demanded. "Wait," a small voice whispered. This was the battle of patience, the hardest battle of all. The drive was in his pocket. He could run to the police station now, but the main gate was blocked by Silas's car. The back fence was topped with razor wire. If he tried to climb, they would catch him. He had to wait. He had to sit in the darkness, in the mud, while his enemies hunted him, and trust that he would survive the night. He squeezed into the hollowed-out trunk of a rusted Cadillac at the bottom of a stack. He pulled the trunk lid down, leaving just a sliver of air. "Where are you, Thorne?" Silas's voice echoed, distorted by the wind. "You can't use that drive. It's encrypted. You're just delaying the inevitable. Give it up, and I'll give you 10,000 cash. You can leave town." Adrian held his breath. A flashlight beam swept over the gap in the trunk. He clutched the hard drive to his chest like a life preserver. "God, you were silent before," Adrian prayed silently. "Don't be silent now. Hide me." He lay there for hours. His legs cramped. The smell of rust and mildew was suffocating. Every creak of metal sounded like a gun cocking. This was the crucible. He had to trust that the dawn would come, even when the darkness seemed permanent. At 5 a.m. the rain stopped. The heavy steel door of the yard rolled open. The shift change. The morning crew was arriving. Adrian kicked the trunk open. He was stiff, freezing, and looked like a madman. He sprinted toward the open gate, past the confused morning workers. "Hey, you!" Silas had fallen asleep in his car by the exit. He woke up, fumbling with the door handle. But it was too late. Adrian was on the public street. A police cruiser was idling at the traffic light on the corner. Adrian didn't run to the cop. He fell onto the hood of the cruiser, holding the drive up like a trophy. "Arrest me!" Adrian screamed, tears mixing with the mud on his face. "Arrest me and take this evidence!" The twist of waiting. The handcuffs went on again. The battle of patience wasn't over. Adrian sat in an interrogation room for 48 hours. The FBI agents were skeptical. Silas had already spun a story that Adrian had stolen trade secrets and was trying to blackmail him. "The drive is encrypted, Mr. Thorne," the agent said, tossing a file on the table. "AES 256. We can't crack it. Without the password, it's just a paperweight. Silas wins." Adrian closed his eyes. He had fought the fear. He had survived the night. And now, a password stood between him and his life. "Check the metadata date," Adrian whispered. "What?" "The date the encryption was created," Adrian said, his mind flashing back to a memory. "Silas is arrogant, but he's sentimental. He thinks he's the hero of his own story. And? Try the date he started at the firm, but backwards, European format." The agent looked at him, then typed into his laptop. A pause, a long, agonizing silence. The agent hit enter. A green progress bar appeared on the screen. "Access granted." The agent looked up, eyes wide. "We're in. It's all here. The original ledgers, the transfers to the shell companies, the chat logs. Good Lord, he planned this for 2 years. Adrian didn't cheer. He just exhaled, a breath he felt he had been holding for 6 months. Theme, the battle of a dead vision and the battle of resurrection. The scandal was the battle of the century for the financial news networks. Silas was arrested on his yacht, attempting to flee to non-extradition waters. The footage of him in cuffs, looking small and defeated, played on loop in Times Square. Adrian was exonerated, fully and publicly. 2 weeks later, Adrian stood in the office of Mr. Sterling, the CEO of Stratton Oak, the same room where he had been fired, the same view. "We were wrong, Adrian," Sterling said. He looked tired. "The board wants you back, not as a partner, as CFO. We'll double your previous salary. Signing bonus, stock options, and a public apology." Sterling slid a contract across the mahogany desk. It was everything Adrian had ever wanted. The corner office, the power, the vindication. This was the battle of the death of a vision. God often resurrects us, but he rarely resurrects our old lives exactly as they were. He asks us to let the old dream die so a better one can be born. Adrian looked at the contract. He looked at the view. He remembered the feeling of the champagne glass in his hand, the pride, the emptiness. He realized that if he hadn't been fired, if he hadn't lost everything, he would have become Silas. He would have eventually sacrificed his soul for the view. "No," Adrian said. Sterling blinked. "Excuse me? You're naming your price?" "No," Adrian said, sliding the contract back. "I'm saying I don't want it. I don't want this life anymore. I don't want to build wealth for people who don't know the names of their security guards." "Adrian, be reasonable. You're walking away from millions. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," Adrian said, and for the first time in his life the uncertainty didn't scare him. "But it will be real. The resurrection." Adrian walked out of the skyscraper. The air on the street smelled of exhaust and roasted nuts, but to him, it smelled like freedom. He took a cab to his mother-in-law's house 2 towns over. He hadn't seen Tessa or Lily in months. He stood on the porch, his hand hovering over the doorbell. This was the final battle, the battle of resurrection. Believing that what is dead can live again, but knowing it requires work, the door opened. Tessa stood there. She looked older, tired, her eyes guarded. She held Lily behind her leg. "I saw the news," Tessa said softly. "I'm sorry I left. I was scared. I didn't know who you were anymore." "I didn't know who I was either," Adrian said, tears filling his eyes. "But I do now. I'm not the VP of Stratton Oak. I'm just Adrian, and I'd like to apply for the job of being your husband again. Entry level, probationary period." Tessa looked at him. She saw the change. The arrogance was gone, burned away by the salvage yard and the silence. In its place was a quiet, tempered strength. She opened the screen door. 3 years later. Adrian sat in a small, cluttered office. The sign on the door read, "Thorne and Associates, Non-Profit Financial Auditing." He made a fraction of his old salary. He drove a used sedan. He was on the phone with a small charity that was about to be shut down due to a clerical error. "Don't worry," Adrian said, smiling. "We found the error. You're in the clear. You can keep feeding those families." He hung up. He looked at the photo on his desk, him, Tessa, and Lily on a camping trip, covered in dirt, laughing. He had lost the world, but he had gained his soul. The battles, the betrayal, the loss, the silence, the fear. They hadn't been obstacles. They were the training ground. They were the forge. God didn't choose Adrian because he was strong. God broke Adrian so he could become strong. Adrian's story isn't just a drama. It's a blueprint. If you are in the fire right now, if you feel betrayed, isolated, or misunderstood, stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What for?" You are not being punished. You are being prepared. The enemy attacks those who are a threat. If you are facing the 8 battles, take heart. It means you have been marked for something greater. The crushing is not the end. It is the oil for the lamp that will light your way home. Which of these 8 battles are you fighting right now? Are you in the battle of silence, or maybe the battle of betrayal? Let me know in the comments below. I want to pray for you this week. If this story spoke to your spirit, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps us get these messages to the people who need them most. Remember, you are chosen, you are loved, and your story is not over. I'll see you in the next video.